All right, we are recording again. This is part 2 of a cdpACCESS top-to-bottom tutorial. We're going to go ahead and start with the online mods, and we'll go through public comments in this particular section. We'll take another break, and then after that break, we're going to be doing hearing functionality, and we'll do voting. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. As you can see, you've got the big red bar across the top right now. I'm on the test site right now for obvious reasons, since it's not in season. We don't have online mods or public comments available on the live site. So you will be able to follow along with some of this to a point. You won't be able to create new online mods, for instance. Just do be aware that this is the spot where you'll be taking more notes and keeping an eye out rather than actually following along in the browsers. So online modifications happen at the committee action hearing. Once you have submitted a code change, they all get processed. They get numbered based on what committee is going to hear them, what subject matter they have, and then we give them a unique numerical number, each one, so that from this point forward, it's always easy to reference a code change by that unique identifier. For instance, you'll see E1-18, FS1-18. That's always going to be the name that you're going to use to identify a code change. Once you get to the committee action hearing, inevitably, because we're all human, we're going to see one or two things we wish we did differently, or we're going to agree with something if only there was one small change. That's what online mods are for. At the hearings, live, up to the minute you walk up to the microphone, you can create an online modification. It's meant to be small and simple, so this process is very quick and light. You can create a change to the code change that can be quickly read and understood by someone reading it on a big screen at a big presentation. So we're going to go back into My CDP, and we're going to go to Online Mods. And as you can see, just like with proposals, you've got the same search, sort, and filter kind of thing. You can automatically, it'll be set to the correct group, but if you wanted to go back in time and look to your previous year's online mods, you could. And then, of course, you can create a new online mod. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button. Now, because online mods aren't created with the base of the code books, they're created with the base of a proposal, the first thing you've got to do is choose what proposal you are trying to modify. So you can sort them pretty easily by just choosing a subject matter code. Let's say I want to do something in general. When I select that, you can see this list automatically tightens up to just the general. Let's say I want to do 10 or 11. I can just put a 1 here, and it will tighten up to only the ones with a 1 in it, or I could choose a number directly and type that in. If you've got a parted proposal, you can even go so far as to select what part of the proposal it is. And if you're not sure what a code change is numbered, but you know what hearing committee it is, you can even just list the ones in the appropriate hearing committee, regardless of how they're named and numbered. Let's say this G1-18, this is the one I want. I'm going to hit Create, and that's going to create an online mod based on G1-18. So the code change is numbered G1-18 by staff in order to give you a unique number for your online modification, so it's easy for you to identify when you get up to the microphone, you're talking to the committee. We give it your last name, and then we give it a number. Those numbers don't repeat. So in this instance, on the test server, I'm the first person to create an online modification for G1. If 5 other folks had created modifications before that, my first modification would be Rich-6. And that's just, again, to make it real clear and real easy. At the hearings, things move real fast, and we just want to make sure that it's real easy to identify this and bring it up on the big screen. Now that I've got that, you can see this is a very simplified, very pared down version of that proposal process. We've got the Build tab. It's only got 2 items in it. We've got the Preview. I have my copyright, and I have settings. There's no collaboration for online modifications. The idea is you're here, you're at the hearings, you're all in one big room. If you do want to collaborate, find each other, talk a little bit, rather than doing it all digitally, and that streamlines the process just to make sure that you can get it submitted in time for the committee to hear it. On this code editor, I can still import from book, and I can still create new sections just like I could with proposals. But the meat of a online modification, the core of it, is going to be sections that I've imported from the proposal. So when I hit Import from Proposal, it's going to pop up the specific sections and the changes from that proposal. And it's going to show me with them marked up just as they were in the proposal. So I can go ahead and select this one, for instance, and hit import. Now I've got this, and what it's going to do is it's going to basically accept track changes. It's going to give me that edit window with the proposal text exactly like it would be, assuming that we have accepted this proposal and it's now part of the code books. Then I'm going to be able to change that code section from there and can make modifications just like I did when I was creating a code section in a code change proposal. So I'll go ahead and click on that definition. I'll click edit, and you'll see code section is published in the agenda. I can see that markup just as it was in the code change agenda. And here I can make my changes as I need to make them. Because this is meant to be a quick, really fast way of marking up, we don't want you to worry about that. As I showed you before, sometimes the computer does it right, but not in the way that humans would want it. So we give you the strike through and underline tools to manually mark something up in the code change, or excuse me, in the online mods. So here's how it was marked up in the CH agenda. If I think it should just be stairways, no ramps, what I can do is I can say, I see what you're doing here, but I'm going to strike through, or oops, that's underlined. I'm going to strike through or ramps here. I'm going to strike through or ramps here. And I am going to go ahead and save my change. When I save my change, I'm going to see my markup just as I did it here. And this is what's going to show up on the big screen. This is what's going to show up when people view the online mod online through the hearing functionality. And we'll show you the actual hearing functionality after the next break. We'll make sure that you can see exactly how this looks to an outside user, not yourself. Once I've created that quick and simple change, I go to finalize and submit. I've got to have a copyright form signed. Just like with code sections, if we don't have that copyright release form signed, we can't necessarily publish the change you've made. So I'll go ahead and go to copyrights. I'll go ahead and add a new form. Now, this is because I'm on the test server, because on the live server, I do have copyrights already signed. If you created a code change proposal, that copyright would be there and you wouldn't have to worry about it. And now that I've got a copyright signed, I can go back, finalize, and submit. And I can go ahead and submit that online mod. It's going to warn you once you've submitted an online mod that it's locked in. With online mods, that's even more important than it is with proposals. Most of the IC staff is either up on stage or in the staff corral working all the time. We're not often going to have the opportunity to unlock something at the hearings. Just those 10 days are really active, really busy. Make sure that you are absolutely sure your online mod is done before you submit it. Because they're supposed to be simple and light and easy to understand, if you do submit one and you want to make additional changes to it, we recommend you just create a new online mod. Easy as that, because those changes should be small. It shouldn't be a big deal. Here you can see the receipt since I could submit this online mod. This looks just like the receipt you'll get when you submit a proposal, which looks just like the receipt you'll get when you submit a public comment. It gives you the information, it gives you the number, and it gives you the date and time stamp. You can always download and print these just in case you've got any trouble or concerns about when your info is submitted. Once I've submitted something, it does become read-only. This is true of proposals as well. Oh, sorry, since we're on the test site, every once in a while I'm going to catch a bug that hasn't gone live yet. Once you can, you've seen these changes, once you've submitted your online mod, you can preview it. Again, just like with proposals, you'll see the complete text there, and you'll be able to download that as a PDF. So that's really it for online mods. Quick and easy, really light. We don't do a whole lot with them. This is basically a simpler way to get this up on the big screen and show the folks who might be watching the live stream from home at the hearings exactly what the online mods are. So we won't spend a lot of time on that. So before I do jump into public comments, I just realized I haven't turned the chat back on. So I've got that turned back on now. Just a reminder that if you do have any questions about any of this, please do feel free to have the folks in the room there type a question into chat. I'll make sure to read it out loud and then answer your questions if you've got any. So seeing none, we're going to go ahead and go over to public comments. So again, we're going to be in my cdpACCESS, and I'm going to be viewing my public comments. Now, public comments are a lot like online mods. They are a code change to a code change, as Mike Pfeiffer likes to say. You're going to see a lot of the same stuff that you saw in online mods. You're going to see a lot of the same stuff that you saw in proposals. It's a pretty consistent process, but I am going to go through it all the way. Just in case somebody jumps into this without having submitted a proposal before, we're going to want to make sure that that functionality is there. So we'll go ahead and hit New Public Comment. Now, much like with online mods, you do need to submit a public comment on a specific proposal. So again, we do have this listing here. You can filter down by subject matter. You can filter by just the number. You can filter by part number, and if you're not sure what the number is, you can filter by committee and go looking for the proposal. But whatever proposal you choose, you'll hit Create Public Comment next to it. Now, public comments have a couple of different forms and structures. I'm going to take you through the most complex one, simply because it has all of the pieces. If you are submitting a public comment and you agree with the committee, or sorry, you agree with the original proponent as submitted, you agree with the committee who made a modification to it, you agree with an assembly motion that was successful after the CAH, or you want to disapprove it completely, obviously you don't need to create much more than a reason statement. Reason statement and cost impact statement. I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize that both of those are still required for public comments. So for all of those, the documentation is really all you need. But if you also want to submit a modification to the proposal along with your public comment, you're going to choose as modified by this public comment. So I'm going to choose that just because it's got all the same pieces as the other options. In addition, it's got that build tab, and you're going to submit a code change to the code change. I also need to choose an instruction line for the whole public comment. Modify as follows and further modify as follows are going to use the proposal as a starting line. They're going to assume that you accept everything in the proposal and you want to continue to change code sections from there. Replace as follows assumes you want to throw out the code change and you want to start over with at least part of it. So if you're going to use replace as follows, it's going to do what you do with proposals, and it's going to use the code books as a base. If you choose modify or further modify, it's going to keep the proposal and keep the proponent's original changes and use that as a base. Modify as follows, I'll hit create, and now I've got a public comment. Now for public comments, just like with online mods, we try and give them a unique identifier. You can see I've got E1-18 Part 1, that's the proposal that I'm creating this public comment on. It's got my last name, and then it's got a letter instead of a number. So this is public comment M. That would make that, what, roughly 13 or 14 public comments were submitted before me. So you're not going to start with A. You know, I didn't create those 13 or 14 public comments. Other folks did. They may or may not be submitted, and public comments will be given a number when they get published in the public comment agenda. But while I'm creating them and while everyone else is creating them in their sort of unformed state, they do get letters, and you can sort of get a good sense of how popular a proposal is when you create a public comment based on it and see how far down the alphabet we've gone in terms of lettering those public comments. So as you can see, just like in online mods, I've got three options. I can import from proposal. That's going to be the core of any of these changes. I'm going to change the original proposal. And just like with the online mod that you saw before, when I import that section, it's going to accept the changes. It's going to give me the text exactly as it would be published, assuming that the proposal is published into the code books and voted in and accepted. And then I can start changing it from there. Public comments are going to automatically strike through and underline, just like proposals do, on your code sections, on your definitions, on your reference standards, footnotes, all that sort of thing. Figures are going to be images, just like they are in proposals. Tables are going to be manual strike through and underline, again, just like they are in proposals. So for this particular proposal, when I import, here's this code section, they added an exception. This one, they added a couple more exceptions to this one. Let's see, I need to change both of those. And then they created some new sections. And let's say I really do like this new section. I just think it needs, we're going to clear out some of the unobstructed floor space information and change some of that information. So I hit import on those code sections. And just like a proposal, I'm going to see them over here. I can click and drag on these to reorganize my public comment. When I click this, I can move them up or down or remove one from my public comment. Again, just like with proposals, when you remove here, you're removing it from your public comment and you're indicating no changes needed. You're not indicating that you want that removed from the public comment. If you wanted some, or excuse me, from the proposal. If you wanted something removed from the proposal, you'd want to click on it, you'd want to edit it, and you'd want to delete all the information here. So if I thought this should go, if I just delete all of that and it strikes it through, same thing with the section number, same thing with the title. All right, now everything is marked to be removed out of the code book, and when I click save, now that I know that I've got that all marked up. So again, don't remove it here. That just removes it from your public comment or your proposal. If you want that struck through and you want to vote on removing that text from the code books, you're going to want to make sure that it's fully struck through here. Now, documentation looks pretty familiar again, I'm sure. This is just like in proposals. Make sure that you are incorporating information that may be relevant to the public comment, and make it clear whether some of what you're talking about is about the public comment or the original proposal. So with a reason statement, that's pretty easy. With a cost impact statement, we have a slightly different set of drop-downs. The construction impact is going to be the net effect of both the public comment and the proposal. So you don't want to talk about, this isn't whether the public comment makes the proposal more expensive. This is whether the whole proposal, including this public comment, makes construction as a whole more or less expensive at what the impact will be. So at this point, we're often talking about holistically everything, the public comment, any modifications the committee made, if you keep them, as well as the original proposal. We're talking about all of that together. So do keep that in mind as you're writing this information out. When you select something, you want the net effect of everything. Oh, and of course I need to, okay. So all that information's got to be in there before you can save. It double checks you all the time to make sure you've got all the information you need. Bibliography, once again, optional, but definitely recommended if there's some good reading out there. We do, when people are viewing stuff digitally, the links are active. So if you've got this isn't just your traditional book bibliography, just like with most research these days, do feel free to include links, to include information on the web and the outside world here. This is a great way to get white papers and lots of information into your proposal without having to recreate the wheel or replicate it in your reason statement. And then, of course, you do need a reason statement. I'm going to go ahead and leave this blank for a second. I want to show you what the checklist looks like when you don't have one of the required fields filled out. But do remember that the reason statement is required. It's something that you'll need to have completed before you're going to be allowed to submit. Now, just as before, you can collaborate on these. The collaboration tab does not import that information from the proposal. Whoever is collaborating on this public comment is different than the list of people who are collaborating on the proposal. That means even the proponent of the original proposal cannot see your changes. They cannot see your public comment unless you invite them in. And then obviously once you have submitted your public comment and we publish it, they can see it along with everyone else. So if you'd like this to be a friendly amendment, you'd like to talk to the proponent of the proposal, you're obviously welcome to invite them in as a collaborator. You can contact them through the system. You can contact them by email. But do know that this isn't something that can be seen. If you've got a proposal out there, you're not going to see those public comments unless folks invite you in. So do know that that is something that your work product is still private, even though it's is a change to someone else's work. Until it's published, only you can see it, you and the people that you invite in. We don't have that public-facing part of the public comments like we do with proposals. Not only is the phrasing a little bit confusing, what's a public comment? We've never had any really requests for at the public comment phase for all of them to be sort of out there. You're always welcome to invite folks in to share this information. And as before, you can make that a big, long list. Just try to invite only no more than 10 to 15 people at a time. All right. So now we've got that collaboration tab. I won't go too deep into discussion, but just briefly, in case folks are watching this one and not the proposal item, once you've invited folks in to collaborate, you are able to create discussions on this public comment. These discussion items don't publish with the public comment. This is work product. Some folks prefer to collaborate by email. Some folks prefer to collaborate on the phone. We recommend, if you can at all, to collaborate in this discussions tab because it does keep your conversation right there with your public comments. If you've ever got any questions, you don't have to dig back through 4 months of old Outlook emails. You can just go to the public comment, here's the discussion, and read through it and confirm when you got to consensus, who's on board with what. It's just as simple as creating a new topic, creating a title and some content, and then once you've published it, anyone who is available to collaborate on this is going to be able to discuss this with you. Just to reiterate again, I forgot to do that back on the collaborations tab. When you invite someone, you can invite them into different roles. Anyone you invite in is a viewer. They can see the proposal, they can see, the public comment, they can see the discussions, they can participate in the discussions. But you can also invite folks as an editor to be able to edit this public comment. Do note once you've given someone edit access, they are going to be able to edit the public comment and you're not going to be given approval rights to that. It's just going to be edited like you sent them a Word doc. So do know that you'll want to keep an eye on any editors. You can always change them from an editor to a viewer if they're making changes that you don't agree with. If they're making changes you do agree with and they decide they want to sign on, you can also turn them into a co-proponent. And co-proponents have edit rights and are also, they also sign on that preview line. So I've gone ahead and built my public comment. I have put my documentation in. If I've got a new reference standard or something, I can upload files as attachments. I've invited some collaborators. Those collaborators, we've talked it through and discussed it. Again, can't emphasize this enough, double check your copyright. Once you signed one for the group, you should be good to go. But if you signed multiple, make sure that the correct entity is attached to your public comment. The entity that you attach to your public comment will allow, that's what allows us to publish these in the code books at the end of the process. So if you don't sign off on something, it won't make it into the code books. So do double check your copyrights and make sure they're signed off correctly. Of course, you've got a settings tab on these as well. Just like with proposals, you can transfer ownership of those public comments over. So if I am, again, working in an office, I'm not the one who is going to be at the hearings. Public comments don't automatically come to the floor the way proposals do. Public comments have to be moved to the floor by someone at the microphone. So it's really important when you create a public comment that you're going to be at the hearings or someone's going to be at the hearings to move that public comment to the floor. We recommend that you submit or transfer the public comment ownership over to someone who will be at the hearings, just so that the right person can be found. You know, if somebody sees your name as the proponent of a public comment, knows you're not at the hearings, they're not going to know who to talk to. So we really recommend you transfer that ownership over to someone who's actually going to be at the hearings if for some reason you're not able to attend. You can also delete your public comments. This is deleting it totally outside of the system. You're welcome to leave your unsubmitted public comments, your old drafts, everything you want in that list. Keep them year to year. Even if you decide to get something this cycle, it might be something you want to do next cycle. But if there is something, you've got 2 drafts of the same thing, you decide you like the other draft better, you can definitely come in here and delete this public comment. So once I've got all the pieces in place, I can preview. Now, you'll notice that this preview tab's got a couple of sub-tabs to it, unlike with proposals, where you're basically just previewing the version you've created. Now we've sort of gotten through the process a little bit more, and there's a little bit more information that you're going to want to see. So right now I'm looking at my public comment. This is the original proposal that always publishes with it, and then if I scroll down underneath it, I'm going to see, oh, this is a long proposal, my goodness. Chose a good one. If I scroll down, I can see here's my public comment. So together in the public comment agenda, you'll always get the proposal first and the public comment next. This is exactly how it will look in the public comment agenda. So you've got all that together. You can download it. You can print it. If for some reason, if I scroll back up to the top here, you want to see just the proposal in its published form. The nice thing for this is if there are committee modifications, that may already be worked into the, that will already be worked into the proposal. And so the proposal version that you're looking at and that you are modifying with your public comment is going to be the version that was modified by the committee, if that's how the committee voted. So if you want to look at the original proposal as it was in the committee action hearing, as it was originally submitted by the proponent, we always give you this CAH proposal version link here. And if you click on that, it's just going to show you the CAH proposal version, again, as it was in the original committee hearing agenda. Sometimes it's worth taking a look at. Anytime you see that and the committee action hearing that the result was AM, you're going to want to look at this CAH proposal version. We give you a handy-dandy link here to open that in a new window. And if you're like me and you've got a couple of monitors at work, or you've got a nice big monitor and you can split screen what you're doing, you can have this CAH proposal version running side by side with the version that you're editing, so you can always keep track of exactly what you're doing. And speaking of those committee action hearing, ROCA stands for Report on Committee Action Hearing. It's the document that we publish once we all get back from the committee action hearings, just to confirm what the committee did. So in this instance, it's a pretty simple one. The committee disapproved this one. Here's the committee's reason. This will help you as you write the public comment. Sometimes the committee says, if the committee couldn't come to a consensus on a specific modification, but if the proposal had X, Y, and Z modified, the committee would have changed its mind. That might give you a good basis to create your public comment, make sure you're not forgetting anything that came up in conversation at the committee action hearings. If an assembly action had been taken and then had been voted on here, and again, after lunch, we will take a look at that assembly action vote and walk you through that process. If that had been taken, right now you see assembly action none. You would see the original assembly action motion, and you'd actually see the online vote. We give you both the number of votes and the percentage and how that calculated out. Remember that a successful assembly action doesn't actually modify the proposal. An assembly action just creates the first public comment. So if an assembly action has the modification that you think is right, and you're happy with that, you don't have to go through the work of resubmitting a public comment with that modification. You can see the assembly action here, and you can say, I'm just going to submit a reason statement in support of that assembly action. The body knows what it's doing. That's exactly what we're looking for. So this preview tab's got a lot more information for you than just the original proposal. When you're a proponent of a proposal, as we walk through time, as we move through the process, you're going to see more and more items on this preview tab on your original proposal. And your original proposal, you'll always be able to track what online mods were there once we get past the hearings. Once the public comments are published, you'll be able to take a look at what public comments are on your proposal really easily, and you'll be able to look at the different versions of the proposal, for instance, with the committee modifications incorporated. So in the last video, we saw just a simple preview tab with your version. There'll always be, I believe there's potentially 5 different versions of proposal. There's your version that you hit the submit button on. There's the version you worked with ICC staff on, the one we call the CAH proposal version. That's the one that was published in the committee action hearing agenda and was the first version that most people saw of it. We've got the committee modification version, so if the committee modifies it, you'll know that. And then, I take that back, there's only four versions you guys see in the outside world. The 4th version is if there are public comments that are moved at the hearings, and in the online governmental consensus vote, we're voting on the proposal, there will be an OGCV ballot version that will have those public comments worked in. One of those 4 versions becomes the 5th version, which is the final version of the proposal. Once the OGCV is all settled, we know one of those is the final, and that's what's going to get published. But there really are only 4 separate versions of the proposal. All right. So we've gone ahead and worked through all these different pieces of the proposal. We've created all the different code sections that we could want. One thing I do want to note, especially since this is a long proposal, I forgot to show you this in proposals. If you do have a really long proposal, 100, 200 code sections isn't outside the realm of possibility. If you're renumbering 2 chapters and adding some more information, if you're adding a whole new set of definitions to the books, you can use the search button up here, and it is going to, well, that's not going to help. They're all numbered the same. It's going to be able to search through this list, and it will tighten down the list only to the items that have information that you typed in here. So if you've got, you know, sections, all of Chapter 2, sections 201 through 215, you can type 215, and it will tighten up, and you'll only see the 215 code sections, 215.1. You'll only see that subsection and its subsections and so on. So you've got a search feature here inside the proposal itself, and then inside this public comment if it gets really long. Unlike online mods, public comments can be as long as you want them to be, just like proposals. If you feel the need to change every single section in a really long code change proposal, that is a perfectly valid public comment, and that might be what a proposal needs to get it approved. So do know that these public comments can be as long as they need to be and as complex as they need to be. All right, so I've got my code sections. I've got my documentation. I did leave this reason statement blank. You'll see why in just a second. Most of the time, you're not going to have attachments. You can add images to your reason statement and cost impact statement right in those edit windows, so you don't need to attach them here separately. Really, the only thing you'll need to attach here is if for some reason you are introducing a whole new reference standard at this stage of the game. Remember that anytime you submit a new reference standard to the books, you've got to include a copy of that reference standard for us so that it can be reviewed by ICC staff, especially if it's not published publicly. If it's out there on the web, you can provide that web version, otherwise provide us with a PDF here. If for some reason you are still waiting on the promulgator, you can submit your code change or your public comment without that copy of the reference statement, but do know that we're not going to publish that or consider it a complete proposal or public comment until you get that version to us and it can be published with the code change. So do please keep that in mind with reference standards. You want to always make sure to attach them on the Attachments tab. And then we'll go to Finalize and Submit. Now I've made my required changes. I signed a copyright form, but what we didn't have on the proposal before was an error that we needed to fix. You'll see that that's red. You'll see I cannot finalize this public comment at this time. I can't do anything with this until I make that change. So include a reason statement in both cost impact statement fields. It'll take me to fix this. And I'll say, oh, I forgot to include my reason statement. I'll go ahead and say whatever I need. as previously noted, you can copy and paste information into these tabs, but again, we really recommend that you retype it each time, and that you enter information directly into cdpACCESS. We know that sometimes you've got something written up in email in Microsoft Word because you were collaborating offline with some folks, and you do want to copy and paste it in. When you do that, do make sure that you use the appropriate copy and paste option here, or that you save it as a plain text file rather than trying to copy and paste in more information. If you try to include colors, font changes, particularly complex word tables, anything that's got really complicated formatting that Microsoft Word might be able to handle, but your basic Google Chrome or Firefox or Edge or whatever browser you have can't handle as well, you may hang up your proposal, and once you've copied and pasted some info in, we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to get it out of there and clean it up. So we really do remind you to, if at all possible, type your information directly into cdpACCESS. Now that I've made my reason statement, I can save it, and I can go back to finalize and submit. Now I've got all my green lights here. I've got a couple of optional items. I'm fine. I don't need a bibliography, so I can click on that. That's going to give me a green check off on that. And then I don't have any attachments. I don't need to review them. I'll check off on that. I've got all green lights here, and now you can see I can submit this public comment. I'll go ahead and hit that. It's going to warn me. Once I've submitted it, I can't make any further changes. I'm good with that. And I'll get that receipt just like previously. So now you can see when you submitted it, where you submitted it. It's got the deadline right on it. So obviously January 1, this one submitted on September 12th. I'm a little bit late. You can always print this for your records. That deadline text will not change on you, and you'll always have a record that you submitted something before the deadline. We do have a soft deadline on all of this. By that I mean we're not going to flip a switch. If, for instance, our deadlines are usually midnight Pacific to give you the whole day, we're not going to flip a switch at 12:01 and shut that off. We usually go ahead and leave it open. If you've got a good reason, you know, we've got the hurricane working its way up the coast. If some power goes out and we had a deadline, you should be able to submit that a little bit late. And then always email cdpACCESS@iccsafe.org and give us the reason why. That is co-development staff's discretion if they're going to be able to accept anything late. But we do at least let you submit it so you've got the work in the system, and then you can provide your reasons why after the fact. So that is about the end of public comments here. I must be more caffeinated and talked a little bit faster because it didn't take quite as long as proposals did. So I think nobody will mind very much if we take lunch a little bit early, unless you guys have got some questions. But that's online mods and public comments. We should be, I'll go ahead and turn off the recording in just a minute, but unless you guys have got some major questions, we'll go ahead and break now for the about 15 minutes early. We'll break for an hour, and we'll come back after to talk about voting.